pretty well covered everything now. If not, it's on the list. Okay, here is something we've been promising people for a long time. We actually demoed it a couple of times, a couple of years ago. And we actually said we were going to deliver it a couple of years ago, and then didn't. And this is the ability to take a solid body, sweep it along a path, and define a swept volume and use that as a tool to modify a model. So this is sort of a classic example. So let's go back out here. Swept volume. Pick a tool, pick a path, pick a direction. Simple as that. So there's my horizontal, what they call linear cam. We used to do those where I worked. You know, you're converting rotating motion into linear motion. And this is one of the schemes for doing that, is with a linear cam. And this is very hard to model. And if you need to do it precisely. And if you types of work we did where it was reversing, so I couldn't have a whole lot of slop. In other words, that cam had to just fit in there just perfect. So trying to model this was tricky. Now it turned out that we didn't have to, when I was working, we didn't have to worry about this because we had a special NC machine tool that, it wasn't NC, excuse me. We had a special machine tool, it was all mechanical, to build these cams for us. So we did it all mechanically. But then we didn't have a whole lot of varying in it. It was just, you know, different lengths, different diameters, different pitches, different size rollers. And we could set that up in this particular machine tool. But for anybody who needs to build the model using modern day machinery, you know, 4-axis machining in a modern day machine, you have to build the model first. And this is how you can build it. Speaking of cams, there's another problem which a lot of people are not aware of, and that's this problem, where I'm given the diameter of a follower and I'm given a path. And I now want to build a plate cam so that that path can be realized from that follower. So we're going to do the same thing again, swept volume, pick the cutter, pick the path, pick the direction, and I get this. Now somebody said, well, what do I do about that? Well, we have a way of taking care of that. There's a thing out here called delete body, which we added a few releases ago. Now this is not the same as delete. This is delete body. If you delete a body in normal NX, you know, just delete something, the feature goes away. And in other words, everything would have gone away. So this way, I only deleted the body, and it actually is a feature. See, delete body. If I suppress that feature, it comes back. It's sort of like an anti-feature. But somebody said, well, gee, I could have done hit. I could have done hide. You know, technically I could have. I could have come in here and said hide. Well, see, it hides the whole body, so I needed to pick the right body, that body, and hit hide. So yes, I could have done hide. I could have moved it to another layer. But if I then did a step file, or I did mass properties, or an IGES file, or there are certain companies that have rules. They run Checkmate. There's a test in Checkmate that says, do you have more than one solid body in your model? And it'll scream at you if you have more than one solid model, one body. So this way, by deleting it, going in here and doing the delete, for all intents and purposes, it's gone. Doesn't show up when you do a step export, doesn't show up when you do mass properties. You run Checkmate, that body isn't there, because we have removed the body from the definition of the model. But we've done it by creating a feature that negates it. And therefore, suppressing that feature unnegates it. So it is like an anti-feature. So if you're ever in a situation where you need to get rid of, you got some spare geometry left over, body, you only work with bodies, got sheet bodies and solid bodies. If you have some spare bodies working, left over, but you'd like to get rid of them semi-permanently, use this. It's been in there for about 3 or 4 releases now. It's called delete body, which is different than delete. Now, this is the true profile of this cam. Somebody said, well, wait a minute, I could have just taken this curve and did an offset curve, the radius of the follower, and I would have had the same result. No, not quite. As it went around this corner here, it actually has a different geometry situation. It'd have been close, but it wouldn't have been exact. This is an exact way of doing it. So this is another use for this ability to take a piece of geometry and move it through space and have it give this model. Now, we're working on enhancing this even more, and that's why we've kind of delayed this, because when we showed this to people, a very important set of customers, we actually have 2 or 3 people that are in this particular business, saw this and said, oh, this is great. Because they make a piece of geometry that's very, very complex. It involves very high precision grinding of shafts. And the grinding wheel goes around the shaft in a rather, in sort of helical shape. Think of cutting tools. They now need to model these exactly because they're running analysis. They're doing finite element analysis on these cutting tools. So they need exact models. And it's very, very hard to create the geometry represented by a high-speed formed piece of grinding stock on these shafts. So that's what held us up releasing this, because this is limited to either normal to the shaft or like this plate cam. In other words, you can't tip it at an angle. So what we've got is a Parasol people working on a deal where they can do like a lead and lag angle, like you do with a cutting tool, where you can put a lead and lag on this so that we can simulate this cutting wheel at this odd angle going around like a shaft and cutting out the flute on a cutting tool or a drill bit. And so that's what we're waiting for. Remember I said a moment ago that we might be waiting for a later version of Parasol to be put into this before we release it. Well, that's the piece we're getting. So in about 2 phases, they promised me that we're going to get this, and we'll be able to start doing this even more sophisticated, and then we'll release it. I've been complaining for the last 2 years that we really need to get this out, and we've been beating on the Parasol people's head. I suggested we release it with a caveat in it saying, you can do these, but you can't do that, and you'll have to wait for that, and they decided, no, let's do it all at once. And so, you know, we're getting it a little late, but we're getting it. So that's sort of be my last contribution to development, was I harangued them into this. Okay, do we have any questions? I have a few minutes left. I guess about 10 minutes left according to the schedule. Actually, 1 minute left, sorry. Yes?
Currently in NX10, when I run a line, say horizontal, like